So, Dr. Wehby, how would you differentiate yourself from Mr. Merkley? I mean, because there is the in-depth answer to that, and then there's kind of the generic 15-second, 30-second answer that you have to give people. What is the short answer to how you differentiate yourself from your opponent?
Well, I think the biggest difference is that I'm not a career politician, I'm a doctor. Mm-hmm. And as a doctor, I'm a person who has spent my life taking care of people and solving problems. And I really think that that's a new approach that we need in Washington, D.C., is somebody that's willing to look at all sides of an issue and solve a problem. I'm not beholden to special interest groups or to a particular way of thought. I, as a doctor, have learned to look at an issue from all sides and come up with a solution, to be very logical as opposed to ideological. And I think that's something that's missing because there's so much polarization nowadays. The way we can't seem to move forward with anything because everybody's dug in so much on one side or the other. And there is a way to find that common ground without sacrificing principles, and I think we should, it would be nice if we could see a little more of that.
And it's every candidate I interview says that.
Yeah.
Her name is escaping me, the Democrat won in Washington County to be a congresswoman. And I said to her, I said, you know, why are you going to be different? She gave me the same answer you did. So did her Republican opponent. And if you look on this, bipartisan group, guess who is the number 3 person who votes with her party? She is, after she told me she was going to be independent. Because the reality is, when you're a freshman, you have to toe the line in order to get any power. How would you be different?
Well, I'll tell you how I'll be different. Like I said, I'm not a career politician. I'm somebody who is an independent thinker and a problem solver. And I have a job right now where I make a difference every day. I love what I do. I love taking care of little Oregonians. I'm a pediatric neurosurgeon. I trained until I was 35 years old to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. And for me, it makes no sense to walk away from a job where I feel like I make a difference every day, to go and do something where I'm just rubber stamping. What's the point of my being there? I wouldn't do that. I would, the whole thing that I think I bring is a ability to look at an issue from all sides and to look very, very logically, consider the facts. And I think so much of that's missing now. And so I'm not going to go and just rubber stamp. There's no point in doing that. I would just stay and do what I was doing. I'm going there to make a difference. And it's not about my career. It's about what's most important for Oregonians. We know Oregonians, you know, my opponent votes with his party 95 to 98% of the time, was rated the most extreme senator by the National Journal at one point. And that's not who we are as Oregonians. We're very, very independent-minded. We don't agree with anybody 95% of the time. And I think if you're voting with a party 95 to 98% of the time, like my opponent, then you're clearly not representing our state. We're not a totally blue state. We are a red state with a couple of blue islands. And so for all of our state to be represented, you have to look at each issue as it comes.
When I look at the different articles I've read, there's one of them that kind of, this one has an average here of the polls. So when I look at the average of these polls, it shows you trailing 14.5%. Is that insurmountable?
I think, you know, we're just now getting really started with the campaign. People are just now, as you know, after Labor Day, is when people finally start paying attention. I think that my way of thinking is much more in line with most Oregonians, and I think as people get to know me over time, that they'll see that I will better represent them in the U.S. Senate. And I think that we are exactly where we want to be right now, and we're very, very pleased. We've gotten a ton of momentum, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of interest all across the state and across the country, because this is a a very, very winnable race.
Let's talk Obamacare. Your ads attack Obamacare. Where do you stand now on Obamacare?
I think the key is that we have to transition into something that's actually going to work. I mean, Dan, look, you know, they told us if you like your doctor, you can keep it. If you like your plan, you can keep it. Premiums are going to go down. That the exact opposite is what we have seen happen. You know, we can't go back to the way things were. We did need some reform, but the problem was that instead of doing this in a stepwise, incremental fashion, you know, correcting one problem after another that needed to be corrected, we had this big, massive overhaul. And as you know, Pelosi said, we've got to pass it to see what's in it. Well, it was a 2,700-page bill. There's now 20,000 pages of regulations. So even if you wanted to follow this law, you can. It's just too complex. And so we need to make it much more simple and much more fair.
So to be clear, you're not against Obamacare. You want to change Obamacare and fix it.
I think there are large portions of this law that need to be repealed and replaced with other strategies that would actually work. I mean, for example, making the work week 30 hours full-time instead of 40 hours. You know, that has really harmed our economy. A lot of the mandates in there have harmed our economy. I think that I'm much more of a carrot than a stick person. I think we should give people incentives, let them buy insurance plans with pre-tax dollars and set aside money with health savings account, make their insurance portable. Let people choose the plans they want. You know, so many people, particularly our young and healthy people, would prefer to have a catastrophic plan that covers, you know, cancer or car accident or whatever, and then they may want to set aside money in a health savings account otherwise to cover their cost. But mandating, you know, what's happened is we've had a big government takeover which mandates what you buy. It comes between the doctor and the patient. A free market approach is much better because that would actually lower cost. So a lot that needs to be changed about this, but mostly putting the patient back in control instead of the government.
I think there's a perception that you think all of Obamacare is bad.
Oh, well, you know, I think some of the insurance reforms were good. I'm a mother of 4 teenagers. I'm happy that the children can stay on insurance plans until age 26. I think that's a good change. I don't think people should be thrown off of their health plans when they get sick. I don't think there should be a cap on how much can be paid out for an illness. I think there were some good things in there. But when you transition into a new plan, you keep the good and you change out the bad. And I think that that's what needs to happen.
Let's talk campaign finance. Monday today. So Monday, U.S. Senate is trying to take a vote on super PACs and whether we should limit campaign spending and the influence of super PACs. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I'm not familiar with the legislation that you're talking about, but I do think that we have to be very careful about limiting free speech because our Constitution does guarantee free speech.
A lot of people believe that corporations are taking over elections. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I mean, I think you know, that there are a lot of groups that come together to support candidates, unions, Sierra Club, all different groups come together that are like-minded that want to support their candidates. Again, you know, I'm not familiar with what's in that legislation, so I don't really want to give an opinion one way or the other until I've had a chance to review it. But
it seems like the common man, the individual voters, are being lost in our elections. It is going to the super PACs, whether they're left or right. Whoever has the most money.
Well, I do think that that's something we do see in elections, that there are big super PACs that come in on both sides. And so as long as I think the key is that the playing field stays level.
So the Citizens United ruling doesn't trouble you?
I think that as long as everyone's First Amendment rights to free speech are protected, that's the most important thing.
Let's talk about the Koch brothers. Do you think they may have backfired on you?
You know, I think the thing to remember, Dan, is that as a candidate, I have no control whatsoever which super PACs come in to the race. And I can't control what they do, who comes in, what they buy. I am only interested in my own race. I'm interested in putting forward my agenda of improving employment, jobs, the economy, health care, education for our children. I'm interested in running my own campaign. I'm sure that there will be plenty of outside money coming in on both sides, but I have no control over that. There's nothing I can do.
There's few names, though, that elicit such strong responses, even for or against, when you talk about the Koch brothers. Do you want them in your campain or not?
Again, Dan,
but you have to have a personal opinion. I know you don't control it, but you have a desire one way or the other.
You know, I really, honestly, am focusing on my message and what I want to get across. I am my own person. I'm not beholden to any special interest group. That's one of the advantages of not being a career politician. I don't have debts to pay back to people that have done favors for me in the past.
But as your own person and your own opinion and your own candidate, can't you tell me yes or no whether you'd like to have the Koch brothers involved in this?
Again, you know,
no.
I'm just gonna, I have no control over who comes in, and I'm only focused on my own campaign.
Okay. Marijuana and legalization of marijuana is obviously a huge issue, and it's going to be on the ballot in November. A big schism between the feds and states. What do you think about legalizing marijuana?
I think this is an issue that our state will decide. My personal feeling on this is that as a pediatric neurosurgeon and somebody who deals with developing brains, I do know that there is injury to the brain, the developing brain with marijuana. And so I do have concerns about that there would be more access to marijuana for our young adults and adolescents if it's more prevalent. I do have concerns about that. I also have concerns about our law enforcement officials that, you know, it's not like having a breathalyzer with alcohol where you can check right away. I think that will make law enforcement a little more difficult, but
so it sounds like you're against legalizing.
Well, you know, I think the smart thing, honestly, for us to do would be wait and see what happens in Colorado or Washington. Let them be the test cases, and we can see how it pans out and what the pluses and minuses are. But as a physician, I do have concerns.
Let's talk international. So on Wednesday, President Obama is supposed to map out his plan for dealing with ISIS. What do you want to hear from him?
I think that the problems that we're seeing in Iraq now are a result of failureship to lead. You know, I think that Obama withdrew in an irresponsible way without keeping an eye on the government in Iraq and making sure that, you know, we lost 4,000 soldiers over there. And I think we should have been a little more responsible in making sure that things develop the way they should have. When there's an absence of leadership, when there's a vacuum, somebody's going to fill that vacuum, and it's going to be somebody less benevolent than us. And so I'm concerned about what's going on there, and I think that's a sign of our inability to lead and our leading from behind strategy. I think that we need a coherent foreign policy as opposed to a reactionary one.
Depending on which side of the aisle you are on, people like to blame George Bush for the present economy, dug such a deep hole that we're still not out of it. Blames George Bush for the war in Iraq. On the other side, people are blaming Obama for not turning around the economy. He's now got 1.5 terms to do it. His bungling of Iraq. Who do you put the blame on?
For the economy, or for?
It's all, I think, one ball of wax, isn't it?
I think, you know, no side has a monopoly on the right answers for everything. And I think that that's one issue that's very important in this election. Things have gotten more polarized than ever before. And, you know, our senator was rated by the National Journal as the most extreme member in the Senate. Senator Merkley was rated the most extreme senator in the Senate at one point. And when you're that far on one extreme or the other, you're never in the room when the problems are solved. And I think we've gotten so polarized that it's impossible for us to find that common ground now. But we can find that common ground. We're all Americans. We all want our country to be successful. We all want our economy to improve, our children to be well educated. We all want everybody to have access to high quality, affordable health care. We all have the same goals. We just have different ways of getting there. And so I think the key is to look at all different options. You know, no side has a monopoly on all the good ideas. Smart people will look at all sides of an issue and move forward. The biggest threat, I think, to our country right now, Dan, is people that want to divide us. People that want to divide us on race, religion, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation. I mean, people that are trying to divide us are trying to control us. And using that division, we're the United States. You know, we're supposed to work together and move towards the same goal because we all want the same thing.
I hear 20 years now I've been doing this. In 20 years I've heard every candidate give me that speech. And then they all go off to Washington and they're more worried about getting reelected the next time than doing what you just said.
Well, you know, that's part of the reason that I'm a big proponent of term limits. I think that if all you do is go and try to get reelected again, that it is going to color your perception. And I will tell you one thing, Dan, that I tell as I go and talk to different groups, that two things I will promise. The first is that I'll always tell the truth. And second is that I'll never cast a vote with my reelection in mind, because that's not my goal. You know, I have a job. I'm not a career politician. I have other talents. You know, I am doing this because I want to do the right thing, not because I want to be a career politician. I want to go and represent Oregon and represent our state.
So you know what I'm going to do is, in a year from now, if you get elected, I'm going to go look at your voting record, and I'm going to compare it to what you're saying now.
Okay, you're on.
Okay. Will you talk to me? If it turns out you're 95%, 90% with your party, will you still talk to me then about that?
I'll always talk to you, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll always be happy to talk with you.
Okay. Let's talk about your personal issues. Do you think you've gotten past them, the situation with your ex-husband and your former boyfriend, or do you think those are still dogging you now?
You know, I've already answered that question, Dan, and I will tell you that I am always going to protect my children and people I love and care about. And I think that this attempt at character assassination is really a shameful attempt to distract from the issues and from Senator Merkley. Certainly it's Senator Merkley's attempt to do this is he's trying to distract from his record as a Washington insider and the fact that he's failed on jobs and the economy and health care. And I think that's what this is, this entire distraction. And people in Oregon care about their job. They care about whether or not they're going to be able to pay the mortgage and feed their kids, what sort of education their children are going to have. They don't care about these other issues. And frankly, it's a bit insulting that we would be wasting time talking about these things when there are so many big issues that Oregonians care about.
It's rare to have the police called on you as a professional. It's even more rare to have it happen twice in your life. It starts to look like a pattern. So I would think it would be fair to ask about those things. And what about your character leads to those things?
Actually, I think this says a lot more about Senator Merkley's character than it says about mine.
Because you believe his campaign is pushing this, is that what you're saying?
Again, I'm always going to protect my children and people I love.
Can you be more definitive than that?
I'm always going to protect my children and people I love, and I've already answered these questions, Dan.
Okay. Which brings me to my next question. You have a very respected job, a very well-paying job. Why give up all that for like the questions I just asked you?
I will tell you that having gone through this process, I see what's wrong with Washington, D.C. and what's wrong with our political process. Because this is the reason that so many good people won't run, because they don't want to be drugged through the mud. They don't want their families to be drugged through the mud. They don't want to be misrepresented and have stories fabricated about them. And that's the reason that so many good, talented, smart people won't do this. But, you know, I was warned that politics was a fact-free zone, and indeed, it is. But it's really a shame when people have to resort to deceptive stories and mischaracterizations because they can't argue the issues. And whenever someone is personally attacking the other side, you know that that's because they can't win on the issues. Margaret Thatcher said that she always used to rejoice when the attacks on her got extremely personal, because it meant that she had won on all the political issues. And I do think sometimes I need to scan my own brain for having done this. But you know, I'm doing this because I really think I can help. You know, I try to explain it to people, and the best way I can explain it is telling them a story about a little boy with a brain tumor that I took care of. And he was a teenager and came to me with a brain tumor. I took the tumor out, and he came back afterwards and gave me a thank you note. And in the thank you note it said, if we're not here to make life better for one another, then what's the point? And when times get hard, and I always think about that, and that truly is the reason that I'm doing it. I was always taught that you should use your talents and abilities to the best of your ability to make life better, to help other people. I've dedicated my life to helping other people because to me, that's the reason I'm here. Why else, you know? And so that's why I try so hard to make a difference. And I think that this is a opportunity for me to try to help. I don't want our generation to be the first generation that can't honestly say that our children are going to have the same opportunities that we had. When I go around from group to group and talk to people, I always ask them, do you think your children are going to have the same opportunities that we did? I think out of 10,000 people, I've had 5 raise their hand. And when I think about the generations before us, and I think about moms that cradled their little sons and taught them to walk and got them to kindergarten, taught them how to ride a bike, you know, got them through high school, took them to prom, got them going to college, then send them off to war and never see them again. Mm-hmm. And I think about the sacrifices people have made to give us this country that we have. And I'm not going to sit back and let it all unravel. I figured I could either keep going to the operating room and complain to everybody about the direction of the country, mm-hmm. or get out there and try to make a difference. You know, I would rather run and be dragged through the mud and not win than not even try at all. Because I have to try. I think I can make a difference. I think one person can make a difference. And I think there are a lot of people that agree with me. You know, the Wall Street Journal poll that was just out and another poll just recently, 70% of people think our country's headed in the wrong direction. 70%. 80% blame their elected officials. And I hope that they remember that when they cast their ballot this November.
Thank you. I could go on. I could ask you about immigration. I could ask you, but you know, yeah. I think those are the core issues.
Mm-hmm. So you're taping and cutting and splicing? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, what is the situation with the debates? You've not agreed to debates, right?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
We've agreed to participate in debates. As far as which debates we're going to be doing, the teams are, you know, Senator Merkley's team and my team are still deciding which ones. We have had requests from different groups to do that, but I know that we will have several. It's just a matter of how many and when and where. So you will debate? Oh, absolutely. Okay. I'm open to it. It's up to Senator Merkley, but we are definitely open to debates.
Let's see here. I think we're pretty good, unless you want to address immigration.
Oh, I mean, who knows what'll be happening by the time you play this?
Right. Didn't the president say he was tabling things until after the November election?
Right, right.
Why don't you give me your take on immigration while we're here?
Well, immigration, of course, is a major issue, and I do think we need to resolve it. I think, of course, the first thing we have to do is secure our borders. If we don't, it's like, you know, trying to bail water out of a boat with a hole in the bottom without patching the hole. We've got to first of all secure our borders. And then I think we need to know who's here in this country. It's a national security issue. We can't have people here without knowing who's here, particularly now with all that's going on in the Middle East and people that mean us harm. We've got to secure our borders and know who's here. And then it's very important to our agricultural industry to be able to have our seasonal workers here. And I think we should have visas where people can come and go. A lot of people want to come here and work and then be able to go back and forth. So I think if we can incorporate people into some sort of legal status where they can work here, where we know they're here, where they can contribute to society, pay taxes, whatever, I think that is the key. I don't support amnesty, but I don't support the blanket amnesty. I do think that people who are here, you know, we should look at the possibility of a pathway to citizenship, but I think that they should follow the same pathway as everybody else that tries to get in, but they would need to go to the back of the line and pay a penalty, and because we don't want to, you know, reward breaking the law. But
I think I also read, switching topics, that you are fine with gay marriage.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't think the federal government should be involved in our personal decisions of who we love and who we care about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add? We've covered a lot of topics. Is there any topics that I haven't gotten to? I know you could talk for hours, and so could I.
And have.
Yeah, right.
Let's see. I think we've hit all the big issues.
You you support abortion rights, but pro-life yourself? Is that
right?
That's what this is? Okay.
I think it's a personal decision between a woman and her faith and her family and her position, not a woman in the federal government.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that is the end of my questions. I wish you luck if you get elected, because, as I said, I can't count the number of politicians that have told me, promise to go to Washington and be independent, and when they get there, they realize they can't if they want to wield any power and not be ostracized, and then they get very concerned about being reelected. And so they end up voting lockstep with their party. So be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I think maybe that happens to a lot of people. And it certainly happened to Senator Merkley. He was criticizing Gordon Smith for voting with the president 90% of the time, and then he goes there and votes 95 to 80, 98% of the time.
There's all this talk about Vicatia and about how he was able to reach across the aisle. And I remember vividly reading an article in Time magazine about George Bush when he was governor, about his ability to unite people, be bipartisan. And then you get to Washington, and just it's something about Washington that I guess that big microscope changes people.
Well, I have had the opportunity to speak with Vicatia. We're both Lebanese background. And his mom and my dad, and so we had a bond straight away that way. And he was wonderful. I was talking with him about the race, and he said that he liked to meet at Dairy Queen because that's down on the corner and right in our neighborhood. And we were talking about the race, and he reached across the table and took my hand, and he said, you got to be strong. It's going to be hard, but you're in this for the right reasons, and you can make a difference. We need you. And so it was just, gave me a lot of strength at a time, when sometimes it gets hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there are days that this is very hard. But you try to remember that you're doing it for the right reasons. So,
thank you, Doctor.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Good
luck to you.
Thanks.